Hello guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Welcome back to another reaction. Today, we are reacting to the PS Vita Documentary. I've been watching Mystic's videos lately, and they're really good, but this is one I have not seen. In the last stream, I reacted to a PS Vita game, so now we're just gonna continue with learning about the PS Vita, and I'm very excited. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna move that, and let's go ahead and get into this. Oh, I like that music. Fat Princess is an option? Wow.
I think that we need to approach change at Sony from a multitude of different directions. We need to be faster at decision making. We need to be faster at execution. We also need to have a lot more of a focus on what our core businesses for Sony are going to be going forward into the future. And I've identified those as being the video game and network services.
The earliest rumors of a successor to the PSP started around 2009, with sources close to the project claiming the existence of PSP2 was real. Stronger rumors came to fruition in 2010, when it was reported during the Tokyo Game Show that Sony had officially unveiled the hardware internally at a very private meeting in Tokyo. It wasn't long after that when it was being reported that software development kits were being sent out to developers, but perhaps the biggest break in the streak of PSP2 rumors were leaked photos of an early development kit secured by VG247. The device was said to be as powerful as a 360, with twin analog sticks, an HD screen, forward and rear cameras, and a back trackpad. Final specs were not confirmed, but the kit did reveal a sliding mechanism design much like the PSP Go. However, it was quickly discovered that Sony switched back to a PSP 1000-like form factor to keep the unit from overheating. The device was all but confirmed once EA and many other smaller developers openly admitted that they had the device, and they were working away on it. With the looming rumors floating around, Sony was quick to deny any and all speculation, but was open to discussing their goals with future hardware in the portable space. At the time, Sony Computer Entertainment CEO Kaz Hirai had mentioned Sony was planning on offering various playstyles moving forward, one that could cater to smartphone-like touch-based experiences and more traditional games that require buttons and thumbsticks. But at the same time, he also made the distinction that games approaching those different spectrums focus on different audiences entirely, and he wasn't terribly concerned with the advent of phones and tablets on the rise. It's now January 27th, 2011. Sony holds a PlayStation meeting in Tokyo, Japan. The announcement is official. PSP2 is announced with the codename NGP, Next Generation Portable. The company spends an hour and a half detailing the device, showing off games, the UI, and having publishers like Sega and Activision come on stage to pledge their support for the device. But much of what was rumored is shown before the world's eyes. NGP would have an OLED screen, 2 thumbsticks, a front and back touchpad, a front and rear camera, use cartridges instead of UMDs, and tout visuals that rival the PlayStation 3. The system would even be offered in a variant that had a 3G connection. Shortly after the initial product reveal from SCE CEO Kaz Hirai, Sony Worldwide Studios Shuhei Yoshida took the stage to play a small sizzle reel of games that would be coming to the NGP, and the clip was nothing short of incredibly promising. The
Gravity
footage included
Days,
Hot Shots
nice.
Golf, Wipeout, Uncharted, Killzone, Resistance, and many more original games, all completely original titles with a console-quality approach. The demo also included games that would make use of both the front and rear touchscreens, as well as an accelerometer and AR with the cameras. The aim was the best of both worlds, much like Kaz Hirai had mentioned before, formally announcing the NGP not too long prior. After the reel of footage, the company jumps right into a demo of Uncharted Golden Abyss,
Yes.
a completely new Uncharted game made from the ground up on NGP. Witnessing such a graphically intensive game
We
like
reacted to
Uncharted
this
right
in
on
the
go
last
was
live
a
stream.
surreal moment for many gamers around the world. But Sony was quick to show off how Drake could now be controlled up a rope by using your fingers against the back.
What do you think so far? It's
After
really
Uncharted,
cool.
They showed off Little Deviants, an original title out of
I
Sony's
really
now
like the
defunct
touchscreen.
Big Studios. The game was centered entirely around Sony's back touchpad. Sony's vision for the NGP was more broadly approached after this by demoing the system's user interface, demonstrating the system's ability to have a connected friends list, a PlayStation storefront, and social space for game pages. They reveal Near, a location-based app for the NGP that would track distance and collect data for digital game goods. It would track your friends' habits and deliver or trade digital goods between other users. Sony then invited Capcom on stage to show off Monster Hunter Portable 3, one of the most successful PSP games being played on the NGP. The system was now confirmed to be backwards compatible with PSP titles that were purchased digitally. The conference ended with the news that an original Call of Duty was planned for the system.
A Call of Duty for
tailored to
the Vita,
platform
wow,
due to the
okay.
new inclusion of 2 thumbsticks. With the news of a Call of Duty console experience being playable on the go, the NGP was looking built for success.
Today, it's very important that we have a very stable platform that is in for the long haul. And that means that we're providing a very compelling value to the consumer in that once they invest in our products, it doesn't go by the wayside in 2 years or 3 years, but they're able to really enjoy that particular console for a very long time. And it's my expectation that the NGP is going to have a similar sort of lifespan, if you will, in the portable space as well.
Let's talk about how this technology that's developed within
E3 2011 was an important show for Sony. Just as they were seeing major success with PlayStation 3, they had a month-long PlayStation Network outage to address. Not
I love
only
your-
that,
you
but
love
they
your
had to
Vita so
convince
much.
everyone in the
Yay.
room and everyone watching why NGP was going to be the next great portable. They started with officially naming the device, PlayStation Vita. What followed was an excellent showing of Uncharted Golden Abyss,
Do you love it more than
Racers,
me, though?
Little Big Planet, and the announcement of Street Fighter Cross Tekken coming to the platform as well. Most notably, Ken Levine, the creator of BioShock, also made a promising announcement.
It's a bit of a pet project of Irrational's, and it's set in the BioShock universe. And this has been kicking around for a few years now. And it's very early days, and the design is still evolving. But recently, we found the right home for it. It's on this guy. On the NGP. And so this is going to be interesting too.
A new IP was also announced to demonstrate one of Sony's greatest visions for the Vita. Ruin, an action RPG, was demoed on PS Vita and
What?
PS3.
It's a genuine
Save
question.
and continue your play on the other consoles seamlessly. As a creative venture between Sony San Diego and Idle Minds, this was very well received amongst viewers. At the very end of the show, it was time for CEO Kaz Hirai to detail the system's price.
And I'm happy to announce that the Wi-Fi...
We don't need to compare my love
will
for objects
retail
compared to
for
you. Okay, fine.
$249. Yeah. The 3G Wi-Fi model will retail for $299. PlayStation Vita will revolutionize the portable entertainment experience.
November 2011. It's learned that PS Vita's new proprietary memory cards are fairly expensive and essentially required. Without any onboard memory and most games requiring storage for installs or save files, a new cost is revealed to eager buyers of Sony's latest handheld. At minimum, $20 for a 4GB card, up to $100 for a 32GB card, nearly half the price of the system for the highest storage option.
Yikes.
8GB and 16GB cards would also cost $30 and $60 respectively.
But yes,
A move
that's
that
the
didn't sit
answer.
well with consumers,
So every time
but
you
a
ask me
move
if I
chosen
love you more than an
specifically for Sony
object
to
or
have more
celebrity,
control and
okay.
security to combat piracy, one of the biggest problems the PSP faced in its many years on the market.
Listen, in my
December
defense,
17th, 2011.
I had an
PlayStation Vita
ex
officially launches
who
in
very
Japan with
clearly
26
loved objects
games,
more than
the
me,
most launched
so-
games of any hardware launch ever at the time. With strong titles like Uncharted, Disgaea 3, Hot Shots, Ridge Racer, Katamari, the system went on to sell 300,000
Hold on,
units
yeah, I'll
in its
rewind
first week
it.
of availability. With Sony's recent TGS remarks that over 100 games were in development,
Okay, I'll do it.
$100 for a 32GB card, nearly half the price of the system for the highest storage option. 8GB and 16GB cards would also cost $30 and $60 respectively. A move that didn't sit well with consumers, but a move chosen specifically from Sony to have more control and security to combat piracy, one of the biggest problems the PSP faced in its many years on the market. December 17th, 2011. PlayStation Vita officially launches in Japan with 26 games, the most launch games for any hardware launch ever at the time. With strong titles like Uncharted, Disgaea 3, Hot Shots, Ridge Racer, Katamari, the system went on to sell 300,000 units in its first week of availability. With Sony's recent TGS remarks that over 100 games were in development, hopes were high that the system was poised to do well. However, after a few weeks, sales started to decline rapidly, mellowing out to around 12,000 units a week. Now it was time for the North American and European launches. On February 15, 2012, a first edition bundle was released, and a week later on the 22nd, the platform officially launched. After a month, the system sold roughly 200,000 units in the United States. March was worse, with around 50,000 units. By the end of February, however, the cumulative total for the platform was around 1.2 million. The rest of 2012 saw a multitude of high-profile games being released for the system. Games like Gravity Rush, Little Big Planet, Persona 4 Golden, and Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation, all of which were received well. Two highly anticipated games, Resistance Burning Skies and Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified, were major disappointments, both by developer Instigate Games, formerly known as Nihilistic Software. They had previously also done PlayStation Move Heroes for Sony in 2011, and were very likely time-constrained after only wrapping up their last project.
I see Jack.
Giving them only a few years to release 3 games. By the end of 2012,
And Daxter.
Sony sold roughly 4 million PlayStation Vitas. 2013 was a turning point for PS Vita. Sony has stopped reporting sales figures, never a good sign from a hardware manufacturer. Many publishers are no longer committing to developing for the platform, and Sony was now gearing up for something far more.
You paid $120 for a
The
64GB
PlayStation
memory
4.
card for the
It was
Vita?
announced
Yikes.
February 20th at a meeting in New York City. All eyes were officially moved over to the 8th generation of video game consoles. But the Vita was not left astray. It played a key role in the PS4
Is that
vision.
Knack? Oh,
Every
yep, it's
PS4
Knack.
game was announced to be remote playable on Vita, a feature which was immediately demonstrated and touted due to the limited ability the feature had back with the PS3 and PSP. Fast forward a few months and Sony officially slashes the price, $200 in North America and €200 in Europe. Memory cards also saw a slightly reduced price across
I
the
feel
board.
like
It only took another month
Knack
for Sony to make
on the
another
Vita would be a
substantial
lot
Vita
easier
announcement.
for me to
PS
play.
Vita PCH 2000 was announced in early September during a pre-TGS conference. The new machine is 20% thinner and 15% lighter. It has 1 GB of internal storage, and battery life was extended by 1 hour. The OLED screen was removed in favor of an LCD screen, and the rear touchpad size was reduced. A new 64GB card was also introduced, for a steep $100. Vita 2000 was scheduled for an October 10th release in Japan, available in multiple colors. During this time, Sony also announced the PS Vita TV, a micro console that runs the PS Vita's operating system and connects to your television, allowing users to play PS Vita games on the TV with a DualShock 3. The console was priced at $100 and mainly intended to penetrate Asian territories with its cheap entry price and TV streaming services, but it was also widely touted as a great companion device to the PlayStation 4, as the Vita TV could also use remote play much like a regular Vita, except now you'd just be playing PS4 on another TV without the actual PS4 console. PlayStation Vita TV was due for release November 14th, 2013.
You can stream every PS4 game on PS Vita. That includes The Last of Us Part 2. Nice!
With the PS4 launched and finding immediate success, the Vita was seeing an entirely different change altogether. Larger budget games were vanishing, and a plethora of independent, smaller scale games were releasing frequently on the PlayStation Store. Through 2014, this change was solidified with Sony's approach to the handheld. Taking action on the current state of sales, the company shifted focus. Sony's head of worldwide studios, Shuhei Yoshida, had responded to the indie boom on Vita by confirming that Sony would be releasing fewer first-party games and instead focus on third-party. Sony's director of product planning and platform software innovation, Don Mesa, discussed in May 2014 that AAA economics don't work anymore on Vita, and that instead of native AAA Vita games, you could use Remote Play to play PS4 games, or stream PS3 games on PS Now, Sony's streaming service that was now confirmed to be coming to Vita. Sony was now painting Vita as a companion device in the PlayStation landscape, rather than a gaming device of its own. But with the launch in early months of PlayStation 4, Vita benefited greatly from one dramatically different approach Sony was heavily focusing on: independent developers. The PS4 was designed around x86 and was molded around what developers wanted out of next-generation hardware. It was meant to be easy and accessible by any and all teams. And with this came a forward-thinking initiative to approach developers that typically wouldn't develop for consoles, and offer them free SDKs, funding, or payment plans to help get their games on PlayStation. With PS4 doing so well, this often encouraged many teams to also release PS Vita versions of their games, usually day and date with PS4 versions. This quickly popularized Sony's cross-buy, cross-play, and cross-save features. You buy one version of said game, you get the other version for free. You could save on one game and continue on the other, and you could sometimes play against or with the other version. Many smaller developers quickly realized that with Vita, they could make money. Their budgets weren't that high, and so Vita sales typically exceeded the overhead. One big proponent to constant Vita releases was Shahid Ahmad and Gio Corsi. Ahmad was the strategic content director for Sony Computer Entertainment Europe, and Corsi is the director of third-party production. Both their jobs were, in a nutshell, get games on PlayStation, and many Vita releases lead back to both of them. Games like Nuclear Throne, Spelunky, TXK, Proteus, Ali Ali, and more all come thanks to Shahid's work. Gio Corsi was also known to ask at the beginning of any project if the developer would be open to a Vita version. And with that came a steady amount of constant releases for a platform that on paper was not selling very well. It was simply solidified what Sony had mentioned during their 2013 E3 press conference, which was that Vita buyers are very dedicated to the platform.
In the US, Vita owners have on average purchased more than 10 games.
Japan was a slightly different story. While small-budget indie games were powering the platform in the West, the East was seeing healthier sales figures and a steady stream of Japanese games. Sony's last major PS Vita game, Freedom Wars, released June 26, 2014, and sold 188,000 copies in its first week in Japan. Despite this, Vita's biggest downfall in Japan was Capcom's decision to release Monster Hunter 4 on the 3DS, a series that's widely popular in the territory and single-handedly helped the PSP outsell the DS for the entire year of 2010. But many other games helped the platform keep it afloat. Games like Danganronpa, Persona 4, Ys, Final Fantasy X Remaster, and many visual novels pushes the system sales to the point of market relevancy. Minecraft was perhaps one of the biggest games, selling over 1 million copies in Japan up to the present day. In 2015 was the beginning of what would be a heavy decline for PS Vita. During E3 and again shortly after E3, Sony confirmed they are no longer working on any AAA games for their own platform. The PS Vita TV, which was named PlayStation TV in the West, was officially discontinued.
Damn.
The GPS-based app that Sony touted at launch was also discontinued. And while 2015 had the same steady release of quality indie and Japanese games, the platform was slowly fading into obscurity. Games like Warrior's Lair and BioShock Vita had long been cancelled. Many publishers have left or never even started, and Vita's core services like social apps and PlayStation Mobile were now being shut down. In September 2015, Sony Worldwide Studios president Shuhei Yoshida sat down with Ollie Welsh during EGX 2015 to talk about his 20 years at PlayStation. during which Shuhei was questioned about the possibility of a PS Vita 2.
Because people have mobile phones, smartphones, and it's so easy to just play games on smartphones, and most of the games on smartphones are free. So I hope, like many of you, that this culture of playing portable games continue. But the climate is not healthy for now, because of the huge dominance of mobile gaming.
By early 2016, PS Vita TV was now discontinued in Asia. Worldwide sales for the platform were somewhere around 12 to 13 million after 4 years on the market. Despite abysmal sales and the closure of many services, Sony continued manufacturing and general third-party support. Games continued to release on a regular basis, and the system even saw a full release for World of Final Fantasy in October 2016, day and date with the PS4 version. But as the months progressed, big shows like E3, TGS, Paris Games Week, and even PSX passed by with very little mention of Vita, as the company focuses primarily on the very successful PS4 and their very early entry into the VR space with PSVR. And in March specifically, Sony opened a new division called Forward Works. This company would instead work on PlayStation games for iOS and Android. Early 2017 started off with two things: the closure of PlayStation Now on PS Vita and the release of Nintendo Switch, a platform which by and large makes Vita more irrelevant than ever before. However, by June 2017, Sony Interactive Entertainment America President and CEO Sean Layden said Vita is still a viable platform. Though he openly admitted it couldn't get over the hump in America and Europe, he said the platform is still viable in Japanese and Asian markets, and that it's still his favorite portable and he travels with it all the time. But for gamers and even smaller developers, Nintendo Switch was now the place to look for portable gaming. For the remainder of the year, all eyes were on the Switch as the platform started to see a substantial amount of support from independent developers. Fast forward to early 2018, and Sony announces there will no longer be PS3 or Vita games added to the Instant Game Collection for PlayStation Plus after March 2019. A few months later, Sony announces physical game cartridges for Vita will no longer be produced by 2019 for North America and Europe, but they will continue for Japan beyond 2019. Along this sentiment, Sony Interactive Entertainment President and CEO John Kodera gave the PS Vita a general deadline of 2020, admitting that the platform is essentially over in America and Europe, but will miraculously continue another 2 years in Japan. Today, presently, PlayStation Vita has sold somewhere around 16 million units after 6 years.
Wow. You like Vita more than Switch, but yet you want to get a Switch too.
PlayStation Vita was set for success, and Sony missed the mark. Expensive proprietary memory cards, non-existent marketing, and a quick drop in first-party support all halted the platform's growth substantially. And while all those rang true, Sony still managed to push out Uncharted, Hot Shots Golf, Little Big Planet, Killzone, Tearaway, Soul Sacrifice, Gravity Rush, and a few third-party AAA games all within the first 2 years. It could download PSP games and use the second stick to remap old games and make them better. It supported many PS1 classics from the PlayStation Store and got native remasters for some of the very best PS2 games. The platform had everything for success and yet couldn't make a fraction of the impact the PSP did. It launched with arguably far better games than the PlayStation.
You'd rather buy a Vita too.
A much smaller price tag, and ultimately didn't come close to that either. While the 3DS did quite well, it hasn't even reached half the sales of its predecessor. It begs the question, was Sony entirely to blame, or did market conditions also dramatically harm the Vita? It was likely both. And yet for a platform that sold so little, it managed to have a constant stream of games for a full life cycle, with developers who made a living on it, and fans who were incredibly vocal and supportive, and it continues to receive new games today. PlayStation Vita may have failed, but it failed gracefully.
Nice. Okay, there's another video we're gonna watch from him, so give me a second. Okay.
Alright, folks, we have another portable PlayStation rumor coming.
Let me pause it and then I'll give my thoughts. Yeah, the Vita looks cute. I like it. I like that it has the touchscreen and it looks more like interactive than like the Switch, in my opinion. But yeah, that's what I think of it.
Alright, folks, we have another portable PlayStation rumor coming in hot, this time coming from Legacy Media, that being Bloomberg. And for those keeping track at home, we've now had a number of rumors regarding this possible handheld that Sony's developing that would be local play, so not something you stream from Sony servers or from a personal PS5 console. You know, at this point, we have had so many rumors regarding this, the development for this SoC that would be powering this portable PlayStation. Kind of goes back to, I believe, the first one being Moore's Law is Dead. That was back when he published a video regarding PS5 Pro internal documentation.
True, Switch is just a screen with controllers.
That was very much confidential info that got that video taken down by SIE. But in that video, he was discussing that, you know, there's another SoC in development for possibly a handheld. Not sure if that's for PS5 or PlayStation 6. So that was some very early information. Then we had Anton Logvinov show up. That was the Russian journalist that this was like during TGS or something, mentioning that Sony brought a prototype to TGS and talking with studios and possibly the press as well, which that part doesn't really add up and make a whole lot of sense. So that one was a little bit sketchy, but we also had Kepler L2 on NeoGAF, Kepler being privy to a lot of ongoings in the hardware business, and so they mentioned for PlayStation 6 very recently that Sony is developing two SoCs where one could be for PlayStation 6 presumably, but the other one might be either a lower priced SKU like a Series SX situation, or it could be for a handheld. And then this past Friday on LTPS, we had the one Chip Hell Forum leaker,
So the rumor is it's a portable PS5
portable handheld that is going to be powered by AMD. And so now we have a report from Bloomberg by Takashi Mochizuki and Debbie Wu, where they mention that the Sony Group is in the early stages of developing a portable console that could play PlayStation 5 games. And the device is aimed at expanding Sony's reach and competing with Nintendo, and that's according to an undisclosed amount of people that are familiar with the matter. So we don't know how many sources, but it sounds like it should be at least two, and Bloomberg is Legacy Media, so they are going to have a certain standard and ethics path that they're going to follow in terms of what they choose to report on, so it's a little bit more substantial than when we have things popping up on Twitter or, you know, NeoGAF, God forbid. But they do mention that the device is aimed at expanding Sony's reach. And the report goes on to say that the handheld is likely years away from launch, and the company could still decide against bringing it to market. And that's not conjecture from the authors of the article, that's from the sources themselves. So implying that they're still maybe not 100% sure if they're even going to want to ship this thing, and it is still very far away, which would position the company next to Microsoft in a similar manner, where they just recently were very open about this, that they too
but hopefully
handhelds, but
it'll be backwards compatible with Vita. Yeah, hopefully.
The entire discussion, well before these rumors have even happened, like the thing I always say is, like, if Sony ever does portables again, where we're talking about local play, it would have to be, at the time, the most relevant platform that would make sense is PS4 games. It would have to be a portable PS4, log into PSN, there's your library. That's why the Steam Deck is such an attractive option, because you log into Steam, there's your games, they just work, mostly. So that would be the case for PS4, but the timing of this product is so, not quite unusual, but it's so fascinating to consider where the company would be, because you can't ship something that's going to play PlayStation 5 stuff right now and it not be absurdly expensive or even remotely possible given thermals and battery life. And that depends greatly on if you're even going to make a device that is going to completely play every single PlayStation 5 game right now. The most realistic thing would be to whitelist and blacklist certain games, unless the studio has to go out of their way now to ship a game on an updated SDK that now allows them to make a lower or watered down mode of that game, I should say. So now there's multiple settings of a game where, depending on the device it's being played on, so a base PS5, a PS5 Pro, or this new PlayStation handheld, and then you would unlock local play on that handheld, and the Portal could still sort of fit in as a lower priced handheld accessory that you can buy into, and it only has the streaming option, and you can therefore play the, you know, higher end versions of those games without having to play them locally. But you can just see where all these things kind of fall into place. Like, that's what the company would probably do. But this would be near the end life cycle of PlayStation 5, so we're also talking about PlayStation 6. That's what Kepler L2 was getting at. That's what Moore's Law is Dead was getting at. Is that, sure, there's this SoC they're developing, and they might not even end up shipping this thing, but if they do, and it's near the tail end of the PlayStation 5 lifecycle, that would look a bit odd with new hardware coming out, and oh, hey, here's this new handheld that's not going to play any of this stuff on PlayStation 6 unless the new developer mandate on PlayStation 6 is going to be, you have to, if you're a studio shipping on our platform, you have to make a PS6 handheld version of this game. So anything that's on the upper end of AAA, you're going to naturally see those games do what a lot of titles see nowadays on, say, PS4 or low-spec PCs, which is reducing frame rate resolution, draw distance detail, LOD distance, just sight lines in general, turning off RT, certain visual enhancements, the foliage, just various aspects to sort of bog those games down and get them running on your minimum spec hardware. So a portable is going to be a pretty low minimum to bear in mind. And that's really only going to apply to not many studios because it's still, as we often say, diminishing returns. There's really more a limit and ceiling on how many studios can even make, the kind of experiences and games that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars that really push hardware nowadays. So conceivably most things on PlayStation Network with a PS4 and 5 label, we all know that stuff can probably play on a handheld no problem. And the developer environment will be more conducive to those kind of experiences too, because we can't overlook the idea that Nintendo will have their next round of hardware out there. And that is probably going to do very well. I think a very safe bet here is Nintendo's next Switch handheld is going to do very well. That's going to create a very healthy dev environment for what is a new minimum on performance, because it's going to be greatly exceeding what the Switch can do, which also means Switch and PS4 might finally be, as far as developer and software support, that might finally be donezo in the next 3-4 years if this next round of Nintendo hardware comes out and we have Microsoft and Sony releasing some handhelds that really bump up that minimum. Either way, the positioning of it makes it very interesting. I've always thought, yes, I have no doubt in my mind, even without these rumors, that the company was working on a portable that can do local play. The big caveat there is, will they actually make it and release it and sell it? Is that in the interest of Sony? Considering Nintendo has done very well with the Switch, with portable PCs doing really well, Microsoft openly stating, yes, we're doing them too, I don't think Sony really wants to be out of position here. It would be a great extender device for what they're trying to do with the Portal per se, which is just keeping people playing on PlayStation. They track playtime very closely, right? They just want people to commit all their time to their platform, spend on their platform. So it's an extension device. It could very well be standalone since it will play locally. So that's a device that, in theory, can start speaking to Japan again, which they have not really been able to do for the last 10 years, basically, right? There's a lot of upside to doing portables now, where around the time the Vita came out, it was a little bit awkward, and Nintendo understood that at the time, too. That's why they left dedicated portables and did the Switch. So there was a bit of a low point. Now it's kind of sloped back up to where it's a lot more viable, depending on how you go about doing it, which is releasing a device that has this existing ecosystem. So if you're a hardcore PlayStation user and you've got a deep library on PSN, in theory, we might be looking at a portable PlayStation that you log in and you can just not even have to worry. You play PS4, PS5, maybe PS6 games on it. Really depends on how the company is exploring it and what ends up getting released to us. But having said that, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation and rumor, and I will see you all on Friday for LTPS, and that is it. Take it easy.
Okay. That was interesting. When did... Oh, that was 4 months ago. Okay. So that's pretty recent. I think because Switch 2 is so expensive, Vita 2 could be a good competitor at a cheaper price. Yeah, I actually agree with that. But yeah, this was fun. Thanks everyone for watching. Don't forget to be a good Bandicoot because Crash is watching, and I will see you in the next stream.